Well, hi there. I'm a person on the internet whose opinion you may or may not value. Today we're going to be talking about fascism. We are going to be defining it because there's not one strict definition. Is it a political party? Does it apply to that political party? What does it encompass? Who does it describe? What does it fully entail? It's very broad, but we're going to be going over all of that because I feel like a lot of people like to use this term vaguely and misapply it, basically. So without further ado, let's get started. Sorry if this is a little like off kilter. This is not scripted. I figured I'd just do this off the cuff because I really don't have time to sit and write a script or edit. So in between both of my jobs and feeding my cat, just don't have time for it. No free time. I can't get by without two jobs. So this is going to be really streamlined. I'm trying to not edit as much as I possibly can. We're going to start with Lawrence Britt's 14 characteristics. Let's make myself smaller here. From spring of 2003 is when this was authored, I guess you can say. Political scientist Dr. Lawrence Britt recently wrote an article about fascism. Studying the fascist regimes of Hitler, Mussolini, Franco, Suharto, and Pinochet, Dr. Britt found they all have 14 elements in common. He calls these the identifying characteristics of fascism. So the excerpt is in accordance with the magazine's policy, blah, blah, blah. Let's go through each one of these, shall we? The 14 characteristics are powerful and continuing nationalism. Fascist regimes tend to make constant use of patriotic mottos, slogans, symbols, songs, and other paraphernalia. Excuse me. Flags are seen everywhere, as are flag symbols on clothing and in public displays. This sounds very familiar, right? The MAGA movement, patriotic mottos, Make America Great Again, slogans, Build the Wall, symbols, a red hat, a Confederate flag, perhaps, songs. There's all kinds of country music out there that's very much patriotic and American-centric, very much nationalistic in nature. So this is not a surprising one. Now, I know what you're thinking. I'm not saying all believers in MAGA and whatnot. I'm not saying they're all fascists. Just stick with me. This is just one example. We're only on the first characteristic, so if you're clicking out now, grow up. Number 2, disdain for the recognition of human rights. Because of fear of enemies and the need for security, the people in fascist regimes are persuaded that human rights can be ignored in certain cases because of need. The people tend to look the other way or even approve of torture, summary executions, assassinations, long incarcerations of prisoners, etc. Yeah, you don't really see many people in government really exacerbate the necessity of human rights. One party or one ideology more so than the other, because when it comes to fascism, dehumanization is pretty much essential because of the need of controlling you. Number 3, identification of enemies, scapegoats as a unifying cause. This kind of plays into the second one. The people are rallied into a unifying patriotic frenzy over the need to eliminate a perceived common threat or foe. Racial, ethnic, or religious minorities, liberals, communists, socialists, terrorists, etc., or the woke mob, or the LGBTQ. There needs to be, there needs to be a scapegoat for the problems of the nation. Someone to look down at, someone to kick down at, someone to other. 4, supremacy of the military. Even when there are widespread domestic problems, the military is given a disproportionate amount of government funding. And the domestic agenda is neglected. Soldiers and military service are glamorized. Really hits close to home, don't it? I mean, isn't that not just American culture in a nutshell? I mean, half of our budget each year is, well, not half. I'll have to take another look at it. But Joe Biden signed off on $780 billion worth of this defense spending, the most we've ever spent in a single year on defense. It's been that way for years and years. Every single president has signed bills for the defense budget that have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and more than the Pentagon has asked for. Rampant sexism. The governments of fascist nations tend to be almost exclusively male dominated. Bingo! Under fascist regimes, traditional gender roles are made more rigid. Women gotta be put in their place, right? Get back in the kitchen, all that, you know? Opposition to abortion is high. Wow, that sounds very relevant and very topical. As is homophobia and anti-gay legislation and national policy. You don't say. I wonder what party in America is like spearheading these ideas. Huh. Controlled mass media. Sometimes to media is directly, okay, this is probably a typo or something. Sometimes the media is directly controlled by the government, but in other cases, the media is indirectly controlled by government regulation or sympathetic media spokespeople and executives. Huh. Censorship, especially in wartime, is very common. You're seeing a lot of that right now in Russia. Swan Lake, anybody? Not to mention directly controlled or sympathetic media spokespeople. Yeah, establishment media. You've probably heard that time. You've heard that time and time again. Tend to play defense for politicians and the status quo on major corporate media news outlets all the time. 7. Obsession with national security. Fear is used as a motivational tool by the government over the masses. I mean, it doesn't really elaborate much on that, but the fact that national security is so obsessed by particularly the right wing. We got to protect our border. We got people coming across. The border crossings are unbelievable, out of this world. It's a nightmare. We're being invaded. Build the wall. It's literally all rooted in fear. That's it. Fear of the other. Oh, you don't want those other folks coming up from the southern border. All right. 8. Religion and government are intertwined. Governments in fascist nations tend to use the most common religion in the nation as a tool to manipulate public opinion. What's the most common religion in the United States right now? Can you name a single Republican that is not of that religion? Religious rhetoric and terminology is common from government leaders, even when the major tenets of the religion are diametrically opposed to the government's policies or actions. This is especially true when you notice the stark, raving hypocrisy by politicians, people within the government, a certain political party, just justifying all their beliefs by referring to the Bible, even though their politics and the policies that they believe in are contrary to the actual teachings of their religion. And it's pretty insane how the religious institutions within this country are heavily skewed towards one political party over the other. Number 9, corporate power is protected. The industrial and business aristocracy of a fascist nation often are the ones who put the government leaders into power, creating a mutually beneficial business/government relationship and power elite. This is very much true, especially when you consider how many millions upon even potentially billions of dollars that are put into lobbying efforts, and how much money is pumped into certain politicians, especially in the Senate, to do the will and bidding of said corporations that spend so much on lobbying. A great website to check out is secrets.org. Find out who owns your politicians. 10. Labor power is suppressed. Because the organizing power of labor is the only real threat to a fascist government, labor unions are either eliminated entirely or are severely suppressed. Yeah, how often do you hear pro-working class rhetoric in the government or in the pro-status quo media? Like the emphasis towards labor unions. No, they're actually widely dismissed. They are mocked and looked down upon. Just throw on Fox Business or CNBC. Number 11, disdain for intellectuals and the arts. Remember when Trump said, "I love the uneducated"? I wonder why he said that. Fascist nations tend to promote and tolerate open hostility towards higher education and academia. You don't say. Which of the two major political parties in America are openly suggesting that colleges are indoctrination centers for like socialism and communism? I mean, it's almost like if you go to college and you're not in a deep red area, which is very much isolated, most of the time rural, most of the time low standards of living, low education rates and whatnot. It's almost like if you go to a college, you're exposed to more of the world. You're exposed to different people. You're exposed to different cultures and backgrounds and ethnicities and whatnot. And so your mind tends to change on a lot of things that you grew up believing. You become a lot more open-minded. You start to understand a lot more than you would have if you didn't go to college and you stayed in your hick small town. Sorry, that was insulting. I probably should have said hick. It is not uncommon for professors and other academics to be censored or even arrested. Yeah, Ron DeSantis has entered the chat. Free expression in the arts is openly attacked, and governments often refuse to fund the arts. Interesting. 12. Obsession with crime and punishment. Under fascist regimes, the police are given almost limitless power to enforce laws. You don't say. It's almost like the biggest police departments in America are given the biggest budgets, more so than any other social programs. Basically, like a city's own private, well, not private, but it's like a mini military. The people are often willing to overlook police abuses and even forego civil liberties in the name of patriotism. I mean, how often is it that you see excuses made for police brutality? How often is it that you see just vile videos of police killing unarmed minorities and get off scot-free? It's almost like a lot of police in this country are incentivized to do that because they know they'll get away with it, and they'll make like any sliver of an excuse that they can get away with. They will ride that and usually get off. They'll keep their job and won't be charged. Any modicum of doubt, they did nothing wrong. There is often a national police force with virtually unlimited power in fascist nations. Case in point. 13. Rampant cronyism and corruption. Fascist regimes almost always are governed by groups of friends and associates who appoint each other to government positions and use like nepotism and use governmental power and authority to protect their friends from accountability, like business interests as well. It is not uncommon in fascist regimes for national resources and even treasures to be appropriated or even outright stolen by government leaders. You don't say. Kind of like top secret SCI documents stored at your private resort? Huh. Or looting the treasury? Or using the presidency to enrich yourself and build your brand? Huh. 14. Fraudulent elections. Here we go. Sometimes elections in fascist nations are a complete sham. Really? Other times, elections are manipulated by smear campaigns against or even assassination of opposition candidates. Use of legislation to control voting numbers and political district boundaries, and manipulation of the media. Like how polling places get shut down so that there are super crazy long lines, like lines that last for hours and hours in poorer communities and communities that are predominantly people of color. So they have to sit and wait in line and aren't able to cast their ballot. And then, oh no, if they're in line too long, that's enough reason to cast doubt on the legitimacy of the democratic process in that area, right? Fascist nations also typically use their judiciaries to manipulate or control elections, kind of like the whole fake elector scheme. It's like the past 2 years in a nutshell. It's crazy how literally all of this is completely reflective of the last 6 years. The last 7 years, honestly. While this country has been pretty fascist for quite some time, there has not been a moment, there's not been a period of time in this country's history where the fascism that we have known about and seen for years and years, other than Jim Crow and slavery, honestly, has been exacerbated in such a fast amount of time than the Trump presidency. Obviously, we're still in a better time in America's history, because even though the rights that we do have are slowly degrading, it is better than it was in the 50s, 40s, or before slavery was abolished. It's definitely much better now than it is then. But that isn't to say that all 14 of these characteristics describe the Trump regime to a T, and all his loyalists, all his followers, like perfectly. I do want to get to Umberto Eco's 14 points list, which came out actually, it was published 8 years before this list. This list was 2003, his was 1995. But I think I'll make a part 2 for this. So stay tuned for that. I do got a little bit of editing to do because I did mess this up a little bit. But stay tuned for part 2. And thank you for tuning in. It means a whole hell of a lot. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't. Comment below. Let me know your thoughts. I'm going to try to get a Venmo soon. But if you're feeling generous, I will link my Cash App down below. It would take a lot of baggage off my shoulders. It just provides a little bit of relief. Either way, thank you so much. It means a lot that you actually tuned in and took time to listen to this and understand what fascism actually entails. I'll see you all in the next one. Oh, and one more thing. I do have a debate coming up. Stay tuned for that. I'll provide more details in the next video. I'll see you then.